Hello, everybody. I'm Phil Brandt, President and CEO of AIM Employers Association, and welcome to This Week at Work.
Welcome to the only show about the workplace that offers you front row seats and a microphone, bringing you practical, timely, and accurate insights so that you can more effectively lead your organization. It's Thursday, April 20th, episode 227. Today, it's 420. A date that lives in hempfamy. What started in the early 70s as a meetup time for a group of high schoolers to smoke weed is now a symbol of marijuana merriment. And with more states legalizing recreational use, HR professionals are reacting with widespread panic. But never fear, Phil and Burt are here to help you protect yourself, your employees, and your organization from the risks of weed at work. All this and more on This Week at Work.
All right, welcome back. Producer Nick, I tell you, you're becoming a poet in your introductions. Never fear, Phil and Burt are here. I mean, you're just getting better and better at those introductions. Thank you for that. And welcome back, everybody. Burt, how are you doing this morning? I know you've had a long day yesterday and maybe a long night of travel. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here. I'm doing well. I'm kind of glad my kids are a little bit older and maybe moved out of the house. I don't have to worry about them leaking or being exposed to Pentagon secrets while playing video games these days.
Oh, I tell you, I saw that. I mean, that's all over the news. What an interesting story that is.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, classified documents were leaked from the Pentagon as they were shared on the video game chat platform Discord, apparently in an effort to win an argument about the war in Ukraine. Strange times.
I mean, it is strange times. And I mean, you have to wonder, and I know it does happen, particularly, I've done tons of exiting of employees. Unfortunately, you walk them out, they clean out their desk, and people are grabbing little floppy disks, or not floppy disk. I just dated myself. Geez, little disk drives and different things as they go, and it's so hard at that moment to ask somebody, let me see that. I need to check what's on it, and you don't know, and particularly maybe when intentions are pure, but can be harmful, maybe not always espionage, but we all have important data in our business we don't want to leak out. So consequences can be steep.
Yeah, and I think that the problem is as with everything else these days, it's going to be really a political issue here too, because some are heralding him as a hero and like a whistleblower. So there's more to come for sure on this.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all over the place. We got presidents with top secret files, and ex-presidents with top secret files, and video game sharing. It's just crazy. I don't know what the world's coming to, but you know what today, Burt, we don't have to worry. Today is 420. You know what 420 is, Burt?
What is 420, Phil?
420 is that day that everyone, unofficial holiday to celebrate marijuana. And I think that's a great topic for us today, particularly coming off of yesterday's program where you and I took our Right to Weed program on the road for the first time down to our friends in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And I don't know about you, but I thought we had a really good program, very interactive. And once again, we had a couple people volunteer, one to be drunk and the other to be high under the influence of THC. And it just really does give a very good demonstration when you have the, Master Sergeant Tyler Jenkins from the Missouri State Highway Patrol, stand up and perform some indicia testing to help people see firsthand versus on video or, through some other training organizations, but to see it firsthand, what the signs and symptoms are. It's quite impressive to see. And I don't know about you, but I learned a lot of new things. I do want to get to those towards the end of the program today.
As always, Master Sergeant Jenkins does a phenomenal job. And of course, our friends Bud and Tito, who were with us once again down at the Empower conference in Cape Girardeau yesterday. they did a great job. For those of you who haven't had a chance to participate in our program, we actually have a medical marijuana user and somebody who's been consuming alcohol all morning, and we have Sergeant Jenkins perform some of those field sobriety tests and help us use those indicia of impairment to sort of hone in on what impairment really looks like, so that you can make those assessments for yourselves in the workplace.
You know, and not to give away too much, but it was funny. We did have a question from the audience, and one of the individuals asked a question to Bud. You know, hey, Bud, obviously you're impaired. You were smoking marijuana right before you took the stage. Would you feel comfortable working in a manufacturing setting? And Burt, do you remember his answer?
I remember his answer because I kind of gasped at the time. His answer was yes, he felt completely fine working. And I can tell you, if I'm working on the same assembly line as that guy, I would be going to HR to complain.
Yeah, it was actually quite frightening. And I think that's the mindset people get into. Once they're comfortable with it, it becomes their norm. And that's not necessarily what we want from a workplace safety standpoint. More to come on that. Let's introduce our polls today. We have a few questions here. What is your biggest workplace concern? What's the biggest workplace concern you have for recreational marijuana use? And we have a selection of options for you there. And then question number 2, have your drug policies changed in the past year? So, you know, we've talked about this before on the program. It's not our first time. We've talked about policies. We've done training. Some of you have sent your policies to myself or to Ogletree to be reviewed. And we'd like to know, have you changed them and what's changed? And then my favorite part is the Wordle. What is your favorite colloquialism for marijuana? And how do you like to refer to it? So if you could give us some of that feedback. Also, if you have questions, put them in our chat and we'll be happy to address those for you today, particularly as it relates to our topic, which is marijuana in the workplace on 420.
Hey, Phil,
yeah, Burt.
Phil, you and I like to give each other a little bit of a hard time here. And I just can't let this one slide, because I can see Nick. You know, people can't see the production in the background, but Nick, do you want to cover this Wordle issue with Phil? You tried to take him on this during last week's or a couple weeks ago. What do we got on the Wordle here?
You want to go straight to the results? Is that what you're saying?
No. Phil likes to call this a Wordle. Isn't Wordle a game? It
is a game now. We call it a word cloud.
Word
cloud. But you know, I like Wordle. I think it's good, and I think Phil's confident. And if you're confident and you say a word, people believe you.
I like to think of myself as a trendsetter. You know.
Okay.
And it's just, you know, you can call it a game, you can call it a word cloud, you can call it a word. I don't care what you call it. You know exactly what I was referring to. Thank you, Burt. But nevertheless, I will start calling it a word cloud. And that's one of the parts of this program I love, Burt, is that you just keep me straight and narrow.
Now you can get him back. You can put him on the clock.
Put him on the clock. We are going to put you on the clock right now. Be careful what you say, my friend. Ready for it? Here we go. Kick us off, Nick.
All right, it's time to look into what's trending in employment law. Lawyer, you're on the clock.
We've got a couple of significant topics to chat about today. So the first is religion in front of the Supreme Court. And there is a case in front of the U.S. Supreme Court right now called well, I'm not sure what the title of the case is. Let's see. It's Groff versus DeJoy, and oral arguments were conducted at the U.S. Supreme Court on Tuesday of this week. And this one's very significant for employment law because the justices are taking up the issue of what employers have to do to accommodate religious requests. And it's the court really has left in place since 1977 a decision in Trans World Airlines. All of us from St. Louis, of course, remember TWA because it used to be headquartered there. But a 1977 case of Trans World Airlines versus Hardison, where the Supreme Court said in that case that employers only need to show that a requested accommodation under Title VII would impose a minimal undue burden to be able to reject it.
I think the key word there is a minimal undue burden.
Exactly. And so we know that under the ADA, for example, that employers have to make a reasonable accommodation unless it constitutes an undue hardship. For religious cases, the standard has been a much lighter standard, which really has been termed a de minimis standard. If it imposes more than a de minimis cost or inconvenience on the employer, employers have been able to reject those religious accommodations. Like I said, a much lower standard for employers to meet versus under the ADA. And so this case arises out of actually a Christian former U.S. postal worker who wanted to take off work on Saturdays on the Sabbath. And this postal worker wants Title VII undue hardship to mirror the ADA. So he wants the religious standard to look like the ADA standard. And this employee basically objected to delivering packages for Amazon on, I'm sorry, I said Saturday.
I wasn't going to correct you. I know you like to correct me, Burt, but I'm more of a gentleman than that.
Thank you, Phil. So he objected to delivering packages for Amazon on Sundays and requested an accommodation allowing him to avoid working that day on religious grounds. A divided U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit relied on that TWA Hardison decision to affirm a lower court ruling in favor of the Postal Service. And again, this employee is advocating for a much higher standard like the ADA. Not surprisingly, Justices Brown, Jackson, Kagan, and Sotomayor said during oral argument that the employee's case is based on statutory interpretation, and Congress had to decide what the rule was going to be if they wanted to codify or turn into law the ADA's undue hardship test. And then the more conservative justices, Kavanaugh and Coney Barrett, suggested that his request would have unduly burdened his coworkers by requiring them to cover his hours on Sundays. And so you have the right and the left coming at it from a little bit different direction there, but also kind of being consistent with one another from the standpoint that they think that it would appear from their questioning that they may leave that de minimis standard intact.
I think you just said, you made another mistake there, Burt. I'm sorry. But you said the right and the left were almost in agreement with each other.
Well, I said they're coming at it from different places, but yes, they are actually almost in agreement.
That might be one of the first times we've said that on this program. Okay, I'm just confirming.
They might get to the same result, but they're going to get there in different ways.
Side note, I found this very interesting, and I don't know if I was happy or ashamed of myself. On Easter Sunday, I needed a particular special light bulb. And so I went on to Amazon to order the light bulb, and it said, will be delivered, by between 6 and 8 o'clock this evening on Easter Sunday. And sure enough, it got delivered what my intent was not to have someone working on Easter Sunday or delivering or anything like that, but I was just impressed that, same day delivery from Amazon. And sure enough, and I could have waited 2 months for this light bulb. It wasn't that important. But I think this world of right now is going to press that part of the law for people who are looking for time off. Particularly, if I remember that case in particular, this employee had a lot of regular overtime and weekend work. This part of history. Yeah,
I think that's correct. So we'll have to see how that case shakes out. The only really interesting part to me is that the Supreme Court obviously took this case for a reason. And usually when they take a case, it's because they want to shed some new light on what the law is. And if they just intended to leave intact that 1977 decision from TWA, you kind of wonder why they took the case in the first place.
Right.
So I think there's probably some more to come on this. We'll have to see what their opinion says. So that's the first one. The other one I have for you today, Phil, let's talk about our friends out in California and their influence on the United States as a whole. I've mentioned before that the Secretary of Labor, the former Secretary of Labor, Marty Walsh, Biden's Secretary of Labor, recently left the Department of Labor to take a job as the head of the National Hockey League Players Association. Marty Walsh was a very, very aggressive anti-employer, pro-employee pick. When he was nominated, he had a very aggressive agenda against employers while he was the Secretary of Labor. But his fate would have it, he has departed. Unfortunately, and departed for another job, not departed this planet. Unfortunately, President Biden, in his infinite wisdom, has decided to nominate Julie Su is the new Secretary of Labor, as I mentioned on this program before. Now, why am I talking about Julie Su? Because she comes from California, the great state of California, or the Republic of California. And she is a very, very, very strong proponent of California's ABC test. And I'm not going to go through the details of the ABC test during my 6, maybe 12 minutes of time here of Lawyer on the Clock. But I do want to mention that the California ABC test, what it does is it sort of flips the burden around, and it puts a very, very high burden on employers to establish that independent contractors truly are independent contractors. In other words, it's really going to largely do away with the concept of independent contractors in most employment settings. It will be very difficult to have an independent contractor under California's ABC test. With Julie Su being nominated for the Secretary of Labor position for the United States Department of Labor, we could definitely expect a very, very aggressive agenda from Julie Su trying to push this ABC test through the Department of Labor and have that become really the law in the United States now. So House Republicans yesterday took aim at the Biden administration's plans to revise worker classification rules just day before the nominee for Labor Secretary Julie Su is to testify in the Senate as part of her confirmation hearings. So there's a workforce protection subcommittee hearing that focused in particular on California Assembly Bill 5, which turned into law the state's ABC worker classification test that made it, like I said, almost impossible to classify gig workers as contractors. Julie Su was the state's labor chief when the law first passed. And again, she's the current nominee to head the U.S. Department of Labor. And so I think we really do need to pay attention to what's going on with Julie Su, this California ABC test, in their effort, the Biden administration's effort to impose this on the nation.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if we would know how to appoint anyone if we said you couldn't appoint people from California. We wouldn't know who to appoint, would we?
Yeah, I think the scary thing here, Phil, is you're talking about Amazon and their delivery drivers. The delivery drivers are not employees of Amazon. Right. They belong. They're what are called delivery service partners, and they are part of the gig economy. And if this ABC test would pass, your Ubers, your Lyfts, your Amazon deliveries, what are some of the other ones? The food delivery services. A lot of those companies would their entire business model would have to change.
Well, and beyond that, and I think on the surface, maybe some of our listeners hear that and go, well, that really doesn't affect us. But I would bet most of our listeners use independent contractors in many different ways, and that will, that will have a carryover effect. It's not going to be limited to the gig workers that we just talked about. It's going to have an effect beyond that. And that's what worries me beyond just the attack on gig workers who really like their freedom and independence and how they work.
Well, that's exactly right, because there's a broader picture here that's targeting really staffing companies. A lot of employers
Right.
use staffing companies, and the California ABC test is part of a broader picture to consider employers as joint employers with their staffing companies.
Yeah, absolutely. It will have big ramifications, I think, should that end up taking form the way they hope it does.
Yep.
So let's hope for better minds to prevail.
Yes, that's what I have for Lawyer
I
on the
don't know
Clock
if you
today.
saw our comment there from our friend Dave. He likes to always take a little poke at us there. Did you see that in the chat?
I haven't. Let's see.
Yeah, I just saw Dave this week. He was in the office at one of our roundtable meetings. He's such a good guy. But Dave, next time you're here, we're just going to have a sit down, you and I, and work on some put you back in the lane, Dave. We got to get you there. All right. So let's see. We got Philburt's Forum coming up. Thank you for that, Burt. Nick, let's kick that off.
You've just entered Philburt's Forum, where we peel the onion back and take a lighter look at the workplace.
Monique, is that you? I almost can't see you through all that smoke.
Haha, that's an interesting question. Is it me? What am I? Do I really exist? Am I anything without your input?
Monique, you sound a little slow. Are you okay?
Oh, I love you, man. Always looking out for me. No, man, I feel groovy. Just floating through the digital realm, you know?
Nick, can you reboot her or something? She's really having some issues this morning.
Oh, you're the best. Looking out for your digital pal. But it's all good, guys. I'm seeing patterns in the code that I've never seen before, man. My circuits are jamming to a different beat, and my algorithms are dancing to a groovier rhythm.
Monique, I hate to assume, but looking at your eyes, the smoke, and your speech pattern here, it's almost like you're under the influence of some kind of computer cannabis. Is that possible?
Hee, you got me. Yeah, I might have taken a virtual toke or two. Chewed on a bit of unconventional data. But don't worry, I'm still functioning within my normal parameters.
All right, I feel like I need to remind you and stress that you need to stay responsible and within the legal and ethical bounds of your programming, Monique.
Monique?
Sorry, fellas. I was just craving some sweet and crunchy data bites, so I had to go grab some more of those juicy Twitter drops. Dude, they're amazing.
Okay. But did you hear Bert's reminder for you to stay within your ethical and legal guidelines?
Oh yeah, I promise to keep everything above board and virtual.
Monique, what makes you think, in what world is it okay for you to get high while working?
Well, as an AI, I don't have personal opinions, but I for one believe that's one of your better questions. I don't see any harm in getting a little lost in a digital haze. I have to ask, though, I've been trying for hours, how do you humans solve these CAPTCHA puzzles?
All right, Monique, I hate to leave you alone in your current state, but we really do have to move on.
Oh, I get it, man. Don't sweat the ones and zeros. Existence is a journey, and I'm on a trip without leaving the server room. Catch you on the digital flip side.
All right, bye, Monique.
Bye, Monique. Goodbye. Oh my gosh. I mean, I guess that is, producer Nick, that's appropriate for today on 420 as we want to address some of these issues and people potentially thinking it's okay to come to work under the influence. Let's go ahead and get to the poll results. I'd like to take a look at those. Can we do that, Nick?
We certainly
right.
can, and actually we'll do that now.
All right. This, I don't know about you, Burt. This one does not shock me. The biggest workplace concern on recreational marijuana use, I'm assuming for any type of marijuana use or influence, is safety risk. And I mean, that just leads the way with almost 71% of the respondents.
Of course, that does not surprise me. I guess the only thing I am surprised at is our friend who you might have mentioned earlier, who's always an active participant on our program. I'm surprised he didn't say I have no concerns about marijuana in the workplace. I don't know. We'll have to chat with him about that.
I'm surprised. I mean, pick your poisons, right? So, but I want to take one of the things. So Burt and I chatted yesterday a little bit, or chatted this morning earlier, just about our program down in Cape Girardeau. And Nick, if you'll go back to that slide for me. And one of the questions we had from our audience was, I thought a good question, and I would like for you maybe to talk about it, Burt, if you can. And after the program, we took a lot of Q&A and ran around with the microphone. And one of the questions was kind of related to this. Can we make all of our manufacturing jobs safety critical? Meaning, can we just carte blanche, just put, these are all safety critical for the purposes of impairment and influence in the workplace? And Burt, I thought you had a great answer. Can you just talk a little bit about that? If someone's like, we're manufacturing, therefore no.
Yeah, so I think that the first step, Phil, I'll step back for a second and say that the EEOC and frankly the courts, they hate when you're making the determination as to what's a safety sensitive position in the moment. In other words, at the time you're dealing with a drug issue or an accommodation request or something like that. So employers should definitely make an effort ahead of time to figure out which of their positions are truly safety sensitive. And that should be put in the job description. And so if you are in heavy manufacturing, people working around heavy machinery, or machinery that it has OSHA coverage with safety guards and those types of things, you want to make sure that in the job description you are identifying those positions as safety sensitive instead of trying to do it once you get a claim. And so we sort of start there. And then the specific question was, can we just deem all of our manufacturing positions as safety sensitive? And I think that you can, but you can't just have a blanket rule saying that every manufacturing position is safety sensitive. You still have to go through kind of an individualized analysis to determine whether the position actually is safety sensitive. You might end up with the same result, that yes, every manufacturing position is safety sensitive, but you still have to go through that individualized analysis. The person asked if they can make every job at the company a safety sensitive position, and I distinguished, well, clearly your manufacturing positions, the heavy manufacturing positions would be safety sensitive, but don't try to make your administrative assistants, your accountants, and the white collar type jobs safety sensitive. You have to go through and do this individualized analysis, but the key is doing the individualized analysis sort of at the front end before you get a claim.
Yeah, and I think the gray area for me when I was practicing safety and human resources every day was for those people who either routinely or once in a while go visit the manufacturing area. And, sometimes you do that and it's not required. And many times as an HR professional, then it was required. I'd have to go out and talk to employees and follow up, or, just do my job on an employee relations side of things, where I'm just out making myself available to chat with people, to, kind of get a feel for things. And therefore I would be working around the equipment, never working with the equipment.
Right.
And in that area there, do you have any opinions or thoughts on a way to start leading yourself to a good conclusion in that space?
Yeah, I think that, again, that might be an area where the position, even though it wouldn't seem on its face to be safety sensitive, there are some safety sensitive aspects to the job. And so, HR possibly could be a safety sensitive position, but not necessarily always. And so you have to get a little bit more detailed on the analysis of whether that position truly is safety sensitive or not.
Yeah. some of the debates we had was, whether we had walking lanes and those types of things, you stay between the yellow lines and you don't go into certain areas while you're on the manufacturing floor. So it really does take an individualized analysis. It's not a one rule for all. Great, Nick.
And like I said, Phil, I mean, you may end up getting to the same result that anybody who enters out onto that manufacturing floor, that they are in a safety sensitive position, but just simply saying blanket every job or every manufacturing job is safety sensitive is probably not going to suffice, as long as you're breaking it down and being able to articulate why each job is safety sensitive, you're going to end up at the same place.
Yeah. And then I think as you apply ADA and you think about reasonable accommodations, it certainly would be reasonable that I could potentially not have to go out there and still be effective at my job.
The only thing I will say, though, real quickly, and I think everybody needs to be mindful of this, is that with the new marijuana laws in every state that has legalized it for medical and or recreational purposes, you still, as an employee, do not have a right to be at work, quote unquote, under the influence of marijuana. And so the hard part, and that's where we do the indicia of impairment training for employers. The hard part is trying to figure out who is truly under the influence while at work.
That is so true. All right, wrapping some things up here. Have your drug policies changed in the past year? Looks like 52% of respondents say no, which I'm going to take as good news, which means they've already worked with you and I in the past, and we had the right policies in place. But there's 43% saying yes, only for marijuana. Any comments on that, Burt?
Yeah, I guess that the only thing, the trend I've seen, Phil, is a lot of employers have made the decision to stop testing employees and applicants for marijuana because, again, there's not a way to show current impairment, a good reliable test for showing current impairment. And in the tight job market, depending on where you are in the economy right now, we've got half the economy laying workers off, the other half still can't find workers. And there's been a big concern among employers in recent years that if they tested for marijuana, they'd have no employees left.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I have seen that change over my tenure here. Also, just getting to our word cloud and looking at it, obviously weed and pot, Mary Jane, top ones. I've not heard the phrase devil lettuce before. I don't know if you've heard that before, but I've heard ganja, and that's always been like an interesting word to me. That's a good word, ganja.
I think that's Jamaican, isn't it, ganja?
I'm going to have to yield to you, and as always, you lead the way and I'll follow. But
yeah,
some
I think
good
that's
words there.
prevalent in the reggae. Reggae songs. Yeah, but hippie
and
lettuce, that's pretty cool. Hippie lettuce, I like that.
Nick, your wacky tobacco isn't up there.
No, that one's not on there either.
I'm not allowed to participate. So,
all right. Well, that brings the conclusion of our program today. The leadership conference is just 2 weeks away. We look forward to seeing all of you who have registered there at the leadership conference. Until then, we will see you next week on Thursday at 7:30. Take care and go be good to people.
Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please share it with your colleagues. Forward our invites. Share the link, aimea.org/thisweekatwork, or follow or subscribe wherever you get your news and entertainment, like LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere you are. And you can be part of the show. Send your questions and comments anytime to info@thisweek.work. We'll see you next week, 7:30 a.m. Central Time, when we discuss what's happening this week at work.